turn yourself into your favorite characters. Who do you want to be today? This is DIY Cosplay Shop.
What's up everybody, my name is Elizabeth Rage and welcome to DIY Cosplay Shop. Today I am super excited to be working on a costume based on some truly epic armor from the new action game For Honor. With me today is Hendo from DIY Prop Shop, who's going to be helping me out a little later in the build. I've been playing the beta and this game is awesome. Seriously, I can't wait to get back into the open beta on February 9th. Now in the game, you can pick from 3 different factions of history's most elite fighters. And For Honor has tasked me with recreating the Peacekeeper, a killer assassin from the Knights faction. And I don't even have to gender bend this one because this character is a badass chick, so I'm gonna do my best to do her justice. So let's take a look at the Peacekeeper. She's a character who can move quickly and silently on the battlefield, so we have to make sure to choose fabrics that allow for a lot of movement. She seems to be mostly clad in leather armor except for the mask, the pauldrons, and possibly even the shins. She also has 2 swords and a dagger, which you can see in the back. Most iconic about this character is the hood and the mask, so those are going to be really important parts of this build that Hendo is actually going to be doing. Her color theme seems to be mostly green, red, and blue, and she sports a blue and black tabard that is totally customizable within the game. When we're shopping for fabrics, it's going to be really difficult to find anything that already looks like it's been through battle for 1,000 years, so we're going to be doing a lot of distressing on this look as well. So now we're gonna go ahead and work on the Under Armour part. It's like a strappy dress with a bunch of different leather straps that are all sewn together with little X's. So what I did for this is wrapped my mannequin in some plastic wrap and then covered the entire thing in duct tape. What this allows me to do is draw directly on my mannequin with a permanent marker. So since this is a symmetrical garment, I was able to use the right side of the mannequin to pattern out all of my straps and the left side to pattern out the front and back armor. Then all I have to do is flip it over the center line and I'll have a completely symmetrical pattern. Now since this armor is technically all separate straps connected by little X stitches, I'm probably going to have to make an underlayer to make sure that everything stays together. So because of this, I have to be really specific about where I cut it first. I'm going to start with the back seam just so that I can take it off, then do the shoulders and the neckline. After that, I'll go ahead and do both sides right down the side seam and then start making my pieces from there. So to transfer our duct tape pattern onto paper, all we're going to do is lay it down, trace it out, and then add a little bit of seam allowance. After you make your paper pattern, you're going to transfer everything onto fabric. Now this is not the fabric I'm going to be using for this build, but it's a very similar fabric and I decided to do a mock-up just to make sure that everything fits exactly the way I want it. Now all of these pieces you're going to want to cut 2 of, except for the back yoke piece, which you'll only cut 1 of. But right now my fabric is folded over on itself, the yoke piece is placed on the fold, so I'll only be cutting out 1 symmetrical piece, and all the others will have 2 because they mirror each other. So now I have the base layer of my mock-up all sewn together and I'm just going to do a test fit to see how it's looking. I ended up having to put in an extra seam just because it got a little bit too nipply with just the cross darts. Still looks pretty good. So now that my mock-up is done and I'm mostly satisfied with it, I can now cut out all the pieces again out of the real fabric. I've made a couple changes just based on what worked and what didn't work in the other one, and now I'm ready to sew it all together. So most of the seams in the top are pretty straightforward. However, the darts can be a little bit tricky. So for these, all I'm gonna do is take my darts and fold them in half. Then using the foot of my sewing machine as a guide, I'll stitch right along the side until I come to a point right about at the edge. Then I can attach it to the piece that goes next to it and it should look something like this. After I have 2 pieces that match, just like this, I'll match them up at the dart seams and I'll be able to stitch down the center from there. We can also go ahead and put a stay stitch down on all of our top pieces. This way it'll create the illusion of having a really thick fabric stacked on top. This will look so much better when it's all sewn together and there's a nice clean edge. The only other thing I'm going to do for the top is add grommets to the back so it can be completely laced up and customizable to your size. Hendo and I are going to be sharing this costume, so it needs to be able to fit both of us. So I'm going to put 2 rows of grommets in here so that it can fit me and then be taken in to fit her. She's itty bitty. Super cute. Next up is the bib for the tabard. This sits right around your neck like a little skirt and looks something like this. The tabard's going to attach underneath with a strip of Velcro. This way you can switch out your tabards whenever you like. I'm gonna paint this now so that it doesn't look like the same fabric I've used for the rest of the build. So now it is time for the sleeves. It is a two-part sleeve. There is an upper sleeve piece that looks like this and a lower sleeve that looks something like this. And you sew them together and you'll get something like this. For honor! Man, if I was buffer, I'd fill this out a lot better. So next up is the skirt part of the armor. Now, based on my research, I found out that this is actually called a cingulum, and it's based on the Greek and Roman armor called terugus, I think. And if I'm saying that wrong, I'm sure you guys will let me know, so I'm very excited to find out. So right here I have the better half of the pattern I made earlier. I'm only using half of it so that it can be symmetrical when I make the full pattern. And this is gonna sit right at my waist and be attached to the top that we made before with about a 6-inch gap in the center. So all I'm gonna do now is cut them out of my pattern, elongate them, add some seam allowance, and then make a mock-up to make sure everything is a-okay. So based on the mock-up I made, I was able to cut out all of my pieces for the skirt. I'm gonna go ahead and edge them all just like I did on the top pieces and then see how they're falling once they're all sewn together. So I cut out 9 strips of scrap fabric and I will use those to go between my 10 pieces for the skirt, right from behind, and then just tack it down. The only thing I still need to do is just paint the back so that it's not gray. This doesn't have to look fancy or special at all. We're just darkening the back so that it doesn't show gray when we spin around. Now it is tabard time. Now this is really simple. All you're gonna do is cut out a bunch of rectangles, 8 small ones and 4 big ones. Yes, math. There is a tabard in the front and the back, and they are mirrored. Sewing them is gonna be pretty easy. You're just basically gonna do a running stitch along the top and the bottom, and then flip it over, match up all your seams. It's basically like making a quilt, so it's pretty simple. I'm sure you guys like make quilts all the time, so you got this. I'm gonna push one of my serge lines to the left and the other one to the right so that it lays flat when I sew across it. And yes, there we go. Nice and square. Now it's time to sew your 2 large pieces. You're gonna do the same thing you did for your single rectangles and just do a straight stitch all the way down. Now we'll do the same thing one last time and connect our big piece to our small piece. So the next thing you have to do for your tabard is do the edging. And to do that, I just cut up a piece of tablecloth that already had some stains on it, so distressing is on its way. And I cut it into about 3.5-inch strips. I'm gonna fold it in half, and I'm gonna go ahead and bind it with my serger first, and then just fold it over, line up the edges, and stitch all the way down the tabard. So to make your own pair of pants for this cosplay is really very simple. All you'll need is a pair of pants that you already own that fit you the way you want your new pants to fit. Now you'll turn them inside out, lay them out flat on your fabric, and trace around the front and the back. The front will have a slightly lesser curve than the back because you need to leave room for the booty. So now that you have your pants all cut out, it's time to sew them. I'm gonna use my serger since this is a kind of a stretchy fabric and I want it to maintain its stretch. So now I'm at the point where I can start to weather all of the fabric. So while I do that, Hendo is going to show you how to make the mask and the hood and a bunch of other parts of this costume. It's going to be great. So you're in good hands. I'll be over here.
The first thing we're going to do is make our mask pattern, which is a sort of oblong tear shape. It has 2 slits for eyes and grates for breathing, and I've cut it out of foam. I've also made the pattern available to you guys so that you can just cut it out and make it on your own if you want to be a peacekeeper too. There's also an embellishment that goes over the front of the mask, which I've also patterned out of paper, and you guys will also be able to download that if you want to. The next step is to sandwich this foam mask between 2 sheets of Worbla, which is a thermoplastic that we can heat up and make it really hold a round shape. I'm going to attach my mask to my face using an elastic strap. And the way I'm going to do that is attach these D-rings to the back before heat forming it. Adding a place to do a top piece of elastic, I just don't have another D-ring. I've already cut the embellishment into Worbla, and now I'm just going to trace on where it goes, since I'm going to heat form this first and then attach the embellishment after.
It looks like a mustache.
Yes, quite. So the mask also has 5 little bolts and 1 big one. An easy DIY way to make fake bolts is to just use googly eyes. And once you paint over them, they won't look quite so strange. I added these elastic straps to keep it on my face. There's one that goes around the back of my head, and in order to keep it from slipping down, I added one to the top also. And it fits pretty good. It's also kind of annoying to have a piece of plastic press against your face the whole time, so what you can do is get what's called weathering strip. It's usually used to seal the bottom of a door, but you can find it at any hardware store for just a couple dollars. So comfy. The mask is a sort of weathered silver color on the bottom, and this part looks like a brassy gold, so that's how I'm gonna paint it. Now we're gonna move on to the hood, which looks like it's made out of sort of a green suede. This is a basic hood pattern. All you have to do is cut 2 pieces of this shape, sew it along the back, and you're basically done. It's nice and big and floppy. This excess part at the bottom is gonna tuck under the collar that we make and just sort of Velcro in place. I've already sewn this hood together, but in the game it looks like it's sewn together with suede cording, so I'm just gonna add that now to give it that same look. So now the mask is all painted and I have a black head wrap so that you can't see any sides of the face. The next step is to attach the hood to both the mask and the strap on the top, which I'm gonna do with Velcro. Next we're gonna make the shoulder armor. It's composed of 3 spalders and a big pauldron. I'm gonna focus on the spalders first, and I want them to actually be able to move. The way we're gonna do that is cut the pieces out of foam, then wrap them in Worbla, and then attach them with Chicago screws. So now I'm gonna make the pauldron, which goes at the top of the spalders. I've already made a sort of paper template. It's a rounded oval shape with a little bit of a lip. The darts are gonna be what gives it a round shape, and the slits are gonna help it open up to create that lip. I'm gonna cut it out of foam and then glue it together in the basic shape that I need, and then I'm gonna go ahead and cover it in Worbla. All I have to do is paint and weather them, and then attach the straps. These are gonna attach with Velcro at the very bottom, 1 strap around the middle, and then a strap at the top, which will connect to the collar so that it doesn't really go anywhere. The last piece of armor to make is the shin guard. I've already made one, and so we're gonna make the left one. I've just cut out a shape out of foam, sort of just trace around the basic front shape of your leg, and that's your guard. And we'll wrap it in Worbla and stick some screws in it. All I have to do is paint and weather them, and then I can focus on the strapping. I have these leather scraps that are just gonna tie into the screw part, and they'll tighten with these buckles, which are called slide adjusters. So now my shin guards are all done. I have them weathered and painted, and they're strapped in. So now I just have to try them on. In the game, the character has full greaves, but we're gonna cheat and just use boots and paint them the right color.
So while Hendo's been showing you lots of other cool stuff, I have now weathered most of the red part of the costume. This definitely looks a lot more like the one in the game, and I just have this little section right here left to do, so I'll show you guys how I did it. I have this makeup stippling sponge, which actually works great for paint as well, and I mixed some acrylic paints in here to a color that worked, and I'm just gonna put a tiny bit on my sponge and just dab it on to the costume. I've also weathered down this top piece as well, so now that everything is painted and it's just a slightly different color than the rest of it, it's time to sew it on. So I sewed 2 half circles together and then did a wide running stitch all around the top and made a little drawstring pouch. I'm gonna put some fake jewels in it just because why not? And it'll also help keep the weight of the pouch down. So, my booty. So we're finally in the home stretch. Hendo did such an amazing job on the mask and hood and this shoulder pauldron right here. I also went ahead and added this shoulder flap, these 2 straps right here, as well as this neck collar, which is just a piece of leather with a Worbla end on here. I attached these using brass fasteners. I know Hendo likes to use Chicago screws like she used here in the pauldron, but I find that it's much easier to find and get these little brass fasteners. You can also get a box of 100 for about $2. Wow, this is like the first time I've actually gone to save money on a costume. Look at that. The other thing I did was dirty up the tabard. It was once beautiful and now it is dirty and burned and has holes in it and it looks fantastic and is attached to this bib piece up here with some Velcro. Last but not least is the belt. I've already made one, but there are 2 that crisscross over the waist, and I'm gonna show you guys how to do that right now. All right, so last up is the second belt. It's gonna look pretty much like this one. So for this, I have my strip of leather. It is slightly J-shaped so that it fits snugly around my hips. Then I'm gonna take this other strip of leather right here and then lay it on top and attach it using some barge cement. Then I'll cut out a couple little strips of the same leather into these irregular rectangles, barge those on as well, and then fasten it all in with a brass fastener that I've colored silver. For the belt buckle, I just took some scrap pieces of Warbler and then covered it all in some silver rub and buff so it looks nice and aged. Thank you all so much for watching, and a huge thank you to For Honor for letting us make this awesome costume. This is seriously the coolest thing I have ever made, and I am so pumped about it. Also, make sure you go check out Man at Arms. They're making swords from the Viking and the Samurai faction, so check those out as well and give them a big ol' thumbs up from me. Also, huge shout out to Hendo Art for making these amazing costume pieces. Could not have done it without you, so thanks, girl. You can write all your suggestions for future builds down in the comments below, and if you want to see more of me, you can follow me on Instagram. And until next time, my name is Elizabeth Rage, and now you can cosplay.
Thanks again to For Honor for sponsoring this episode. You can play as the Peacekeeper in the open beta starting February 9th. Check out the link in the description to learn more. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.